David Bettner grew up wanting to play video games like his older brother Paul. With a natural curiosity for technology, it didn't take David long to find himself enthralled with the fun and connection that computer games provided.
First thing that got me into computers was actually gaming. It was a game called Doom 2, and in order to play the game I had to figure out the DOS commands to launch it. Windows was coming out around that time, but it wasn't really prevalent. It was a DOS game, so you had to actually type commands into the computer to launch it. And so that was really like my first introduction. It was just knowing that I wanted to play a game and play a game with my friends, and figuring out what the computer commands were to get that to launch.
After high school, David came to the University of Central Florida and began studying computer science. The world of video games continued to appeal to him as he developed his skills through the curriculum at UCF. That extensive training and education prepared him for his next step into the gaming world.
One of the things, in looking back at UCF, that I got most out of it was it was hard. It really forced you to push yourself to figure out how to succeed. You couldn't just coast through it, you couldn't memorize the material. You had to work really hard, you had to figure out how to manage your time, how to think about problems correctly. And by the time I graduated, it was like, well, it was a really tricky job situation after the dot-com bust. And so I ended up taking a job as a tester where my brother was working at Microsoft testing video games. And it wasn't my first pick. I wanted to obviously start programming immediately, but it was kind of a way to get my foot in the door into the industry. And I was testing, the game was Age of Mythology. So I was testing that during the day, and then at night I was working on a tool that allowed the people that were playing the game every day to deploy the latest builds to all the machines, which was kind of a manual process at the time. So I was using my programming skills to create a tool that would allow everyone to kind of make the game, develop the game more efficiently. And so it took several months. I was actually testing for, I believe, 8 months before I got that rolled out, and I showed it to all the programmers, and they were like, oh, what are you doing testing? Like, how come you're not engineering? I'm like, yeah, exactly. So I was able to step into a programming role from there.
Inspired by the variety of gaming opportunities that handheld devices like the iPhone provided, it didn't take David and his brother long to focus their efforts into the creation of a new company, known as New Toy. Their first creation was Chess with Friends, and it was followed up by the wildly popular Words with Friends.
There's two things that sparked New Toy. One was my brother and I, we always had this dream of starting a company together. And then the other one was really the iPhone. We'd never seen anything like that before in gaming, where for the first time there was a device that was always connected to the internet, was always in your pocket, could play games really easily. It was incredibly accessible to people that didn't consider themselves gamers, that didn't have any buttons or complicated controllers on it. And so I think what we saw with Chess with Friends and Words with Friends is it's the first time that we saw everybody kind of playing multiplayer gaming with their friends. What's happened over the last few years in how accessible gaming has become has been really kind of a phenomenon. And with games like Words with Friends and other Zynga games, I knew I wanted to do something that would be constantly evolving and changing, and something where I'd have to constantly teach myself new skills. But it was that kind of lifelong desire to teach yourself and to learn that I developed at UCF that allowed us to, I think, or allowed me to succeed at starting a business.